You've felt it, haven't you? That strange, sacred pressure building in your chest. That feeling that something is about to shift. And this time, it's time for real. But it's not a message from him. It's not a sign from the outside. It's a calling from within. A portal has opened, and only your soul knows it. This isn't just another test. This is the crossing, not the one where he finally chooses you. Not the one where the pain finally ends, but the one where you choose you so fully, so powerfully, that nothing outside of you holds the same weight anymore. This is the last portal before union, and only the feminine can walk through it first, because she is the key. Not by chasing, not by waiting, not by proving her love, but by remembering who she is without needing to be chosen. Have you felt it lately? The pull to go deeper into yourself? Have you noticed how your old triggers no longer grab you the same way? How your body is calling for more stillness and your soul for more truth? You're not imagining it. You're standing at the edge of something sacred. This is where timelines collapse. This is where karma ends. This is where the love you always carried finally becomes your own. He may not understand it yet, but the moment you step through this portal, his soul will feel the shift. And what happens next changes everything. You might be wondering why everything feels heavier lately. Not in the world, but in your body, in your energy, in the silence that now surrounds you. It's not because you're going backward. It's not because you've lost your way. It's because you're standing in front of something cosmic. Something no one else can see, but your soul recognizes. The final portal. And here's the truth no one ever tells you. This portal doesn't look like a gate. It doesn't come with signs or confirmation. It doesn't wait for the divine masculine to catch up. It opens when you are ready. But ready doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean healed from everything. It doesn't mean unshakable. It means honest, raw, present with your truth, no matter how messy or unpolished. This portal is not a path outside of you. It's a passage through you. That's why no one else can walk it for you, not even him, especially not him. Because this crossing is only activated when the feminine stops abandoning herself, when she stops giving her light away in hopes of being seen, when she realizes that the only thing she was ever waiting for was her own return. Have you noticed the shift? You're not begging anymore. You're not obsessing over signs. You're not checking his energy constantly. You're breathing, you're grounding, you're choosing quiet. not out of defeat, but out of clarity. That's how portals open, not with noise, but with alignment. And the universe is watching, not to test you, but to see if you'll finally believe that your worth doesn't need to be proven. This portal doesn't reward the feminine who waits. It opens for the one who remembers. She was always the gateway. She was always the one holding the frequency of love. She was always the initiator, because she's the one who sees, feels, births, creates, transmutes. She's the one who holds the grief and still chooses softness, who has been rejected and still chooses to love, who has been abandoned and still chooses to stay present in her own heart. But now the love she gives is coming home to her. This is the final threshold, the moment the feminine stops performing for connection, stops over-explaining her love, stops trying to rescue someone who must rescue himself. And in that exact moment, the portal appears, subtle, energetic, undeniable. It shows up in the way you breathe differently, in the way you say no without guilt, in the way you no longer reach out just to be reminded that he's not ready, because you finally are. This is not just a step forward, it's a quantum shift, one that collapses years of karmic cycles, one that shakes the masculine to his core, not because you punished him, but because you stopped absorbing the pain he wasn't willing to heal. Can you feel it? That tension in the air, like something is being pulled out of you, but also returning at the same time. That strange calm in the middle of what used to trigger you, that urge to do nothing, because you're already holding everything. You're not stuck, you're being initiated. This is the stillness before the crossing. And what lies on the other side is not just union, it's remembrance, it's sovereignty. It's the version of you who doesn't chase timelines, but embodies them. Because the masculine doesn't awaken through pressure. He awakens through the absence of the version of you who kept waiting. And now he feels it. Not logically, not in words, but in the deep, soul-level way that only silence can deliver. So if you feel like you're walking through a space no one else understands, you are. But you're not lost, you're crossing. And on the other side, you, not the version of you who kept asking to be chosen, but the one who finally chose herself. Why the feminine must cross alone. There's a truth most don't speak aloud, but your soul knows it intimately. This part of the path you must walk alone, not because you aren't loved, not because you've been forgotten, but because this crossing cannot be made through attachment. This final portal before union isn't a doorway you walk through holding someone else's hand. It's one you step through by releasing the hand you've been clinging to in your heart. Even if that hand is invisible, even if it's energetic, because you've held space for him, for the connection, for the dream, for the version of love you knew was real, even when the 3D denied it. You stayed, not out of weakness, but out of sacred devotion. But now the devotion has turned, not against him, but toward you. And that changes everything, because in this portal, your love doesn't disappear. It becomes pure power. It becomes fire. It becomes clarity. Have you felt it? That quiet egg that's not quite pain, but something deeper. That whisper inside you that says, stop trying to carry both your path and his. That strange freedom in saying, I don't know what happens next, but I can't keep holding this weight alone. It's your soul calling you into your own field, your own timeline, your own throne. You see, Divine Feminine, you are not meant to shrink for love. You are not meant to bend, contort, and mold yourself so he can find his way. You were meant to rise, and in rising, you change the air, you shift the frequency, you open a doorway that didn't exist until you stood in your full truth. And here's the mystery. He cannot follow you there until you stop looking back to check if he's coming. It sounds harsh, but it's holy, because the masculine doesn't wake up when you hold the light for him. He wakes up when your light is no longer chasing him. That's the paradox, and that's why this crossing is yours alone. It's not about separation. It's not abandonment. It's the cosmic law of frequency. What is whole attracts what is whole. And until you walk through this portal fully in your wholeness, unattached, unbending, unapologetic, union remains a potential, not a reality. This is where timelines shift, where karmic cords dissolve, where the version of you who waited dies, and the version of you who leads is born. But yes, you'll feel grief. Grief for what could have been. Grief for the emotional labor you carried. Grief for the stories you wrote in your heart. Let it come. Because on the other side of that grief is gold. Not the kind you chase, but the kind you become. And when that happens, he will feel it. Not through your words, not through your presence, but through your energetic silence. He will feel the field shift. He will feel your soul retracting from the codependency you didn't even know was still there. And he will panic, not because you punished him, but because the container of love he used to lean on is no longer cushioning his avoidance. That's when the real awakening begins. Not yours, his. But that part is not your responsibility. You've done your part. You've held, prayed, cried, waited, doubted, hoped, forgiven, and stayed soft in ways no one saw. But now, you must walk through the portal alone, unarmored, unshaken, not because you're proving something, but because you've remembered something. That union doesn't come when you finally get him. It comes when you fully return to you. So ask yourself, are you willing to walk without knowing if he'll follow? Are you willing to rise even if he resists? Are you ready to let go of being the one who always waits? Because the truth is, he can only follow you into truth if you go there first without needing him to come. And when you do, you'll find that the one you've been seeking all along was the version of you who chose herself completely. That's the portal, that's the crossing, and that's what opens the path for real union, not as fantasy, but as frequency. There's something happening behind the veil now, something he didn't expect, something he can't explain. He doesn't hear your voice. He doesn't feel your pull. He doesn't sense your energy wrapped around him like it used to be. And for a moment, he thinks he's finally free of it, free of the weight of the connection, free of the pressure to become more, free of the intensity he wasn't ready to face. But then the silence lingers, and it doesn't feel like peace. It feels like loss, like something sacred has slipped through his fingers, but he can't quite name what. That's the moment. That's the shift. That's the beginning of his undoing. Not because you're gone, but because you stopped reaching for him in ways that once fed his ego. This is the silent breakthrough, the one he never saw coming, the one his soul can no longer avoid, because your energy was never just energy. It was structure, it was memory, it was a divine mirror. And now that it's no longer reflecting back the version of him that needed saving, he doesn't know who he is, not in the way he used to, not in the illusion he built. This stillness you've chosen, it's not a punishment, it's power, and it's echoing through his nervous system like thunder. Because this time, you didn't announce your departure. You didn't explain your silence. You didn't make a scene. You simply stopped holding the weight that was never yours. And in doing so, you shattered the script. He thought you'd always be there. He thought the connection would always hold space for his delay. He thought your love would always catch him when he fell. But now, it's different. Now he falls, and the cushion is gone. Now he reaches, and your field isn't there to respond. Now he sits with himself, and all he hears is what you were always trying to say without words. And here's what he doesn't realize yet. This silence is your evolution. But for him, it's a confrontation with truth. Your absence is not emptiness. It's a frequency shift, one that calls him into his own becoming or leaves him behind. And the masculine, in his rawest form, is beginning to feel it. In the spaces where he used to escape, he now feels restless. In the places where he used to find distraction, he now feels hollow. And in the presence of other energies, he realizes they don't reach him the way yours did. Not because you tried harder, but because you were real. And now that realness is missing, not as manipulation, but as liberation. He is finally alone with himself, and it terrifies him. But it's also where his awakening begins. Because no masculine rises until the comfort of stagnancy is removed. Until the mirror stops reflecting his wounds and begins reflecting his absence. You are that mirror, but now you are silent. And in that silence, he hears everything more clearly than ever. He hears your heartbreak, the one he once dismissed. He hears your love, the one he couldn't receive. He hears your boundaries, the ones you now embody without needing to explain. And maybe, for the first time, he hears his own soul. Because without the noise, without the drama, without the emotional chase, there's only one thing left: truth. And that truth, it sounds a lot like you, not your voice, but your essence. The part of you that never begged, but waited for him in frequencies he didn't yet understand. Until now. This is why your silence is sacred. This is why your stillness is loud. Because it doesn't push him away. It pulls him inward. And in that inward spiral, he starts to unravel. Not because you want him to suffer, but because his soul finally has space to speak. And it's telling him what you always knew, that real love doesn't chase. It doesn't cling. It doesn't perform. It becomes. And that's exactly what you've done. Now the rest is up to him. How her surrender rewrites the timeline. There's a moment in the journey when surrender stops looking like letting go and starts looking like sovereignty. Not a surrender that says, "I give up," but one that whispers, "I no longer wait for what I already carry within me." And that's when everything changes. Not just for you, not just for your heart, but for the entire timeline of your connection. Because timelines aren't rewritten through force. They're not changed through obsession, rituals, or even endless healing. They shift when you shift. They bend when your truth becomes too magnetic to ignore. And your surrender, your real, grounded, soul-level surrender, has just rewritten everything. How? Because when you stopped waiting, you stopped feeding the version of the masculine that survives on your emotional labor. You stopped nourishing the part of him that believed he had infinite time to delay his soul's becoming, while you carried both of your healing journeys on your back. You stepped out of the contract, not the soul contract, but the energetic one, the one that said, "I'll keep holding this space, even if it breaks me." And when that contract dissolved, so did the karmic loop, because that loop was never just about him not showing up. It was also about you not leaving the door open for yourself. But now, you've chosen your own path. You've walked through the portal, and your surrender is not silence. It's not passivity. It's declaration. A sacred act of alignment with your higher self. A frequency that tells the universe, I trust the timing, I trust myself, I trust what is meant for me can never be withheld. And that frequency, it does more than shift energy. It commands reality to reorganize. Because the feminine in her truth is not passive. She's a force of nature, and when she surrenders to her truth, not to her fear, not to her longing, but to the fire within her, she becomes unshakable. And that's when the masculine's reality begins to shake. Not because you pushed, not because you cut him off, but because the field you once filled with your devotion is now filled with your presence. And that presence is not reaching for him, it's rising without him. Do you see how powerful that is? Because now he has to meet you, not in fantasy, not in potential, but in truth. He has to meet you at the new frequency you now stand in effortlessly. And that's the moment the timeline splits. He either rises or watches you ascend into a life he can't follow without transformation. But either way, the old story ends here. Not because you closed the book, but because you stopped reading a story that was written for a version of you that no longer exists. Your surrender is your evolution, and with it, you've become the anchor point for an entirely new timeline. One that no longer runs on suffering. One that no longer requires pain to prove love. One that no longer keeps you in cycles of almosts, maybes, and someday. This is the now where your embodiment creates the invitation. but no longer waits for the response. The now, where your energy no longer explains itself. It just is. And for the divine masculine, that shift is unmissable, because the absence of your effort is louder than any words ever were. It creates space. It creates contrast. It creates a vacuum that calls his soul to rise. And if he's ready, he'll feel the pull, not because you told him to, but because your surrender made the old version of him obsolete. Because the you he knew, she's not here anymore. In her place stands a woman who knows, a woman who trusts, a woman who doesn't chase alignment. She embodies it, and in doing so, she becomes the timeline, not one he has access to automatically, but one he must choose to align with, consciously, fully, finally. And so the story continues, but not the way it began. Not in longing, not in silence, not in delay. This time, it continues in truth. And that truth began the moment you surrendered, not to him, but to yourself. What he feels as she rises, he doesn't always have the words for it. He can't explain it logically. He wouldn't even know how to say it out loud. But he feels it, the shift, the stillness, the strange, electric emptiness where your energy used to be. And not because you disappeared, but because you rose. He feels it like a pressure in his chest, a tightness he can't name, a weight he didn't carry before, now sitting on his heart like a quiet reckoning. At first, he tries to shake it off. He goes through his day, pretending nothing's different. He scrolls, works, laughs at things that don't really move him. But in the quiet moments, something gnaws at him. Something is off. Something's missing. Not attention, not validation, not control, you. But not the you who chased, not the you who waited, longed, explained, overgave. The you who always felt like home and is now no longer answering the door. And that does something to him, because your absence isn't hollow, it's alive. It vibrates with everything he took for granted, everything he didn't understand, everything he thought would be there always without needing to earn it. And now the feminine is rising, and her energy, once wrapped around his avoidance, is now holding her own becoming. He feels it in his sleep, in his breath, in his choices. He picks up his phone to reach out, but doesn't. He thinks of you during the most random moments. In line at the store, in the middle of conversations, in the shower, staring at nothing. And it's not just memory, its frequency. Your frequency is no longer spinning around him. It's anchoring within you. And that shift is magnetic, but also terrifying. Because now he has to feel what you once carried: the ache, the longing, the silence, the wondering if it's too late. And that is the beginning of his return to himself. Because you rising didn't just change you, it rewired the entire energetic dynamic. You're not reaching down anymore. You're not trying to make him see. You're not offering your softness to a version of him that isn't ready. You've become the version of you that only accepts presence, that only opens for truth, that only meets energy willing to rise. And now he stands at a crossroads. He can feel the invitation, but not like before. It's not gentle. It's not padded. It doesn't wait. It just is. And that's what shakes him. Because for the first time, he's not in control of the timing. For the first time, he feels the distance is not a tactic, but a timeline. And timelines don't pause for indecision. He knows something has shifted. He may not admit it. He may distract. He may pretend he's fine. But his soul is not fine. His soul is alert, stirring, remembering, because he can't feel your field in the same way, and it forces him to enter his own. That's the purpose of your rising. Not to make him chase, not to make him regret, but to call him home through the only language the soul understands: energetic truth. And the truth is, your light no longer asks permission. It no longer bends. It no longer performs softness to avoid rejection. You are no longer below, you are rising. And he can either rise to meet you or be left in the version of reality where you no longer exist. And that reality, it haunts him because he feels the contrast. He feels the beauty of you now directed inward. He feels the shift from needing him to embodying yourself. And deep down, in the places he doesn't let anyone see, he knows this isn't your silence, it's your liberation. And that liberation, it's the most powerful mirror his soul has ever faced. Because now he has to choose, not between you and someone else, but between the man he's been and the man he could become. And that choice, it's not yours to wait for anymore. There's a moment in every sacred journey where the gateway begins to narrow, not out of punishment, but because the energy it holds
A letra
is
Y.
becoming too pure to carry anything false. And you, beloved, you are standing at that moment now. This is the final portal, not of the journey itself, but of everything that no longer belongs to it. the illusions, the cycles, the waiting ones, the fantasy of maybe someday wrapped in emotional starvation. They don't get to come with you, and you know it. You can feel it in your body, the way your soul no longer tolerates what once felt normal, the way your silence has become sacred, not passive but powerful, the way your love is no longer currency you trade for breadcrumbs. This is the purification, not of your love, but of your alignment. And as this portal closes behind you, you don't feel afraid. You feel ready, because truth has replaced need. Clarity has replaced confusion, and embodiment has replaced expectation. But what about him, you've asked? Quietly, over and over. Will he come? Can he feel this? Does he even know what he's about to lose? And here's the truth Spirit whispers back every time. He does, not logically, not in language, but in the ache in his chest at 3 a.m., in the dream that leaves him breathless, in the strange emptiness he can't fill with anything else. He feels the field changing. He feels the feminine moving differently. He feels the mirror rising in front of him, no longer begging, no longer bending. And that's why he's restless now, because your energy used to give him time. Now it gives him choice, and that is everything, because this portal isn't waiting for him to be ready. It's waiting for him to be real. And that's a far harder path. Real means no more masks, no more distractions, no more half yeses that sound poetic but go nowhere. It means showing up in presence, in integrity, in love, not the version he thought he could control, but the version that strips him bare and leaves only his soul standing. And that's terrifying, but it's also the only way through, because this portal isn't something you drag someone else into. It's something you walk through by becoming so aligned with your truth that everything not in resonance simply falls away. And what's left is you, radiant, whole, free. You are no longer the one who carries. You are the one who creates. And what you create from this energy, this silence, this sovereignty, this surrender, will never again look like the past. It can't, because you're no longer the woman who would have accepted that past. Now, your field speaks before your words do. It says, I'm not here for potential. I'm here for presence. It says, I'm not waiting to be chosen. I am the choice. And if he rises, truly rises, he will meet you at that frequency. Not because you asked, not because you pleaded, but because the version of you that did no longer exists. she alchemized, and in her place is the feminine the universe was always waiting for. So as this portal closes, don't rush, don't force, don't chase, just listen. Listen to your body, to your breath, to your inner knowing that no longer doubts your path. And most of all, remember, what is real will not pass you by. What is meant will find you, not because you begged for it, but because you became it. The portal is closing, but your truth? It's just beginning, and it is powerful enough to rewrite destiny.